I wish it, well, he's in absentia, you have to let him know.
Let him know.
Amanda, I swear, if somebody ever did that with me, you know what I'd do? I think I'd go grab about 3 bags of M&Ms, go to Home Depot and get a can of Krylon. Yeah, get them ready. It's not like they said they had to be edible, right? I don't want to come. But the last section of this book, I want to talk about this briefly. Section 3 here stems out of my work with the poetics that I had developed, the double one in poetics, and an extension of that, the exploration, the exposure from the unexplored. And this is sort of connected with that gestalt I was talking about earlier. It's all fine and dandy to think that we can use our perception to draw in everything and go back and relearn the field and gather in the elements, but then I realized there's always going to be something missing that's going to affect us, much like the example I give in the book I mentioned in the back. I get on my telescope, I look up at Orion's nebula. It's too far away, nobody can go there. We know something's going on, the stars are maybe light years away, maybe it's already, there's a reaction occurred and it affects us. But we don't necessarily articulate it, but we are affected by it. And so the poetics I was coming up with, I'm thinking, well, this is almost like a failed project. It's like, yeah, you're going to talk about things you can't talk about. Well, yes and no. I think there's a sense, we all have a sense that there is something going on around us that we can't necessarily articulate, but we can maybe express in some way. So that's what this is born out of. And so the last couple of poems I want to read, first of all, Rebel Departure, or it can be read Rebel Departure. And I wrote this poem back in '08, right around election time, right around the time I get depressed every year because of what we've got for candidates. And so every time election comes around, it's one of my rituals is to read Melville's The Confidence Man and to go drink myself stupid. No. This time I actually tried to do something constructive. And so I came up with this poem, which is dealing with a revolution of speculations. I envision a magical revolution take place. I envision one of awareness of the land. And hence with this one, this piece deals with a little bit too, if people were to think about how the collapse of nature in the Renaissance, like the fall of Adam and Eve, there was an ongoing debate that nature fell with man when he fell. Now, no matter how you think about that, now sort of argue that nature isn't suffering some downfall from what we do. And so, Rebel Departure, the intentionally lost cause of the Thelemic Confederacy. Operation Southern Star has begun to dismantle the disunion and secede from fascism and state. The need for inducting Shivite priests is great, and to chronicle the cabinet of tantric fiasco controlled with bardic wailings. The narrative and beast will come out from their caves. Our officers must stand back and listen carefully to their cries, summons to fire only when they see the darkness of lies. Phase 2. Behead the state, usher in the bornless rule, under will-less law down so far, south to signal an essential independence signaling, deep ones to spread order of disorder, where the few who can see will listen up against the whole summons soulful food. Phase 1. The house is as naught, a keep compound of the illities, polity and duress, except in the minds of the rebel, swells, Helion, the fruition of the Kali Yuga, the black house is right here, not over yonder, with the loyal sons of the angst-orbited fate, watchers maintaining the threshold line, bisecting the light and dark worlds, the stars broadcast and stripes, a reminder of pain that is not always a liberator. Not structures, swamps reclaim these old estates, in decrepitude the systemic lumbering goings-on where lurks the green goddess algae draped kelp crown and her bed of wormwood. Vermouth belies her undergrowth, studying the swimming potential spermatozoan flown round. Insurrection of the land, mirrored in the revolting souls, buried beneath the party line, drawn beneath pitched conflicts. Throwaway troops, mulched over that must be forgotten in order to fulfill their purpose, summoned to the cause by shrieks, doetic rebel howls, housing Gehenna, made of the wood of unfulfilled desires, fed by the blood letting Confederate priesthood, the old Southern giants, live oaks, rise up out of the terrible ground, fed on the water of life, a nameless still, witness to the trouble that never left, ignored, erupts into other wars. Phase 0. The battle for the hill to stand upon and increase the field of visual rays standing out, fertile and profound, as ventured by the lonely farmer, descrying the crop's growth under the last rays of sunset, devil worship, aggression of all directions, without a single slave to pull, plow the coveted can run feral growths across the border. And without a boundary, we have a space to share. The air provides an infinite room, housing breath with bodies on the intake. Each image recalled on the mount, beasts of the home front are field foraging to bring more sustenance, fruit bearing, the lower body cleansed, stripped of thread-worn flesh of the wit discarded, so the gentle physique, left alone, will carry liberation to the ground, that theater of revealing, winning. With each runaway inspiration's train, liberation emerges from below, same as a bunch of green peanuts about to be boiled, speak of the main course. Their colors change under the careful watch, heat and salt. Downward focused crosshairs become sights, grave markers, optic grid coordinates. Do little to reveal the rarest honey made by the dying bees. Paradise lost to the victors, indiscernible, discredited, graceless. And for the penultimate piece, I want to read Mountain Scent. And this poem deals, this is the one that the cover's based on when I was up on the Mountain Disease Trail. And I got stuck in a snowstorm, and I actually had to build a fire for a change. I could have probably gotten by without it, but it was good. It was actually an instance where I had to use some survival skills. And I'm always interested in aspects of survivalism, not because I'm getting ready for the apocalypse. None of that. It's just because it's a neat thing to know how to do. It actually lends to having to read objects in the natural world in a different fashion, because as poets and artists, I think we look at the natural, oh, that's beautiful, that's interesting. As a survivalist, it's like, oh shit, if I don't get that right, I'm going to die. And so it's quite a different thing. But maybe not, because I always think about William Carlos Williams, what he said, one doesn't write poems because one wants to, one does it because one has to. And so I thought maybe these two do come together. Maybe survival and creative work and poetry, they aren't so separate from one another. Hence, I came up with the term evolved in this poem of ecstatic providence. And so, Mountain Scent. The moment that is full of the earth is full. That's from Ken Irby's Variations 13. A perfect fire ignites out of ecstatic providence from the top down upon carefully layered kindling, logs for survival set, needs branches of the self-same passion, enables the able, supple limbs upon the trunk from the crown down, pathway blazing. The same applies to our bodies, caught in this illuminating descent, unveiled in the coupling opposites. The third arises, union, reaction, flames spreading downwards, dictated by the eye of the spark. So much light reflected off the fresh fallen snow, rare now, even up higher in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The storm of 16 February 13 caught everyone off guard. On the other side, at the courthouse falls, a peculiar absence of snow. Nonetheless, had the stream running high. At camp, the fire immolates inward, bestowed. 3 lone logs fan outward flames, a devil's pitchfork, the center time, hollowed out, a hummingbird's silhouette fashioned so delicately, long and slender, a sickle bill, now pulsating out of the orange scarlet heart of ember glow, ebbing and waxing, this self-tending furnace, going for hours untouched. How the solitary survive by maintaining their grip and hedge bets, by banking their coals. Accordingly, the beloved has wings, given to volatile displays, caprice and departure upon trains of indecipherable thought. At any given point on the ridgeline, the snowfall rate varied. The park lay bare on the border of shining rock, but back on the Art Lobe and Mountains to Sea Trail it was deepening. No view from the Devil's Courthouse. Whiteout conditions prevailed. The cloud ceiling so low as if the sky's bottom fell out above and below, coalescing in the dissolution of vision's field. All those giant mountain laurel and rhododendrons, thousands of buds, dormant violet hues encased, hidden passions under protection of the snow's wall of winter warmth. How long to hold out for the opening and return from the woods, with skills born bushwise and honed axe edge, ground sense freshly split humor, and nerve balls out bearing on magnetic north. Ultima Thule destiny coordinates along certain lines. Life, that fire-building sensibility, creeps down. It's kinetic, traveling cell to cell from cognition to ignition, spread by the metabolic inferno, carrying swatches of wonderment in a survival sack for all ways take notice, never running but living outside of time. And to move out of the woods, back to the source, and off into absolute space, I want to finish with this last piece of mine, Jimson's Gift. When I first wrote it, and it was published in Sulphur, when was this? It would have been 1987, issue number 23. But I had shared it with Garrett Lansing, who, if those of you who aren't familiar with his work, he is really the preeminent poet of modernist magical verse alive today. And his book, The Heavenly Tree Grows Downward, I strongly recommend it. And there's a new edition that's come out by Atlantic Books, so Richard Grosinger is still doing good books of poetry. But when I wrote this book, I was in Colorado working on my master's, and I'm out in the backyard, and Jimson plant popped up, and I was just amazed with flowers on it. And Garrett's like, well, by the way, Bob, did you know that Fitzhugh Lane, the New England painter, he was paralyzed since 18 months old, and they believe that he probably ate apple of Peru, as it was called, or Jimson. It's interesting because his paintings, if you look, it's very much in the Hudson Valley School of Paint. These realist landscapes, but there's something different about the coloring. There's something different about the texture in the water. One doesn't wonder if it might have come from that experience at an early age of being paralyzed by one of the most deadly hallucinogens on earth. No, Jimson weed is not to be recommended. It is extremely deadly. And it always reminds me of how with a potato, you pick a potato and those green shoots off of it. Don't ever make the mistake of eating anything green on a potato, especially even if you're not allergic. It can kill you really quick. Scuppernong and everything that's in there is something else. But so Jimson's Gift, and Garrett wrote a piece which actually inspired it in part, makes one of his most beautiful pieces. The great shape is without form. All life long the dew falls from heaven. All life long trees climb up from underground waters. In the seed of the old God, the new gods are swarming. The earth is ready for planting. The shut eye is opening the heat. Jimson's Gift, smelling the wet peatness of petunias astride the patio, sends my mind to a less arid land, one where lush vegetation thrives, chaotic, feral growth patterns whose origin one may only speculate on a concise, fertile plant fetus, babe enclosed in a seed, cadence of ortum fecundum, expansion of roots, wild underbrush, gnarly brambles, goetically abrading the ground, the soft, enhanced by the nettled sting. Over in a barren corner, Datura, a lone thornapple, spreads its limbs and toothed fronds, alone purveying the alien unearthliness. Some things so much in contact with Terram, clue at a source beyond the black that nestles stars.